Impossible levels in Geometry Dash have always played a significant role in the game's culture and history. From mysterious maps like Silent Clubstep to infamous titles like Silent Circles, these levels have made a place for themselves as immortalized works that are consistently present in the background. The prospect of remaking and verifying possible versions of these demons is an idea that has been built on numerous times, and it's always exciting to see an impossible level remake rise to the top and restore part of the legacy of the ancient level it originates from. The history of these impossible levels is often a story of great complexity and fortune, but there's one narrative that stands apart from the rest. Death Corridor is an impossible level released in 2015 that today has established itself as one of the most well-known demons of all time, and the adventure it took to become what it is today is one of not only luck, but drama, uncertainty, and determination through even the most unfortunate of circumstances. There are many key pieces to the puzzle of Death Corridor's history, and from the influential figures who touched the level to the drama that spiraled farther than anyone could have expected, Death Corridor definitely has one of the most unique and interesting stories of any level in this game. In this video, I will be taking us back from 2015 all the way to the present, and I am very excited to tell the inspiring and heartfelt story of this once impossible level. This is definitely a level history to stick around till the end for, and I really hope you guys enjoy. This is the history of Death Corridor. To begin the story of Death Corridor, we have to travel all the way back to October of 2015. Back then, the community landscape of Geometry Dash was much different than it is today, with Bloodbath still being the #1 demon and 2.0 having been only out for a few months. Our focus is on a virtually unknown creator by the name of KaotikJumper, who had never done anything really significant in the community prior to Death Corridor. As many of you know, Kaotik would be the one to create the level we know so well today. According to Kaotik, the idea for Death Corridor would come from a combination of two things. He would get the song from the level Treasure Mine by Majako, and he would get the concept from the famous trend of impossible levels. With maps like Silent Clubstep and impossible levels of that vein being some of the most infamous in the game, he thought this would be a good way to get his work some attention. He would do his best to make the gameplay appear hard at first sight, and he intended for the level to be somewhat scary looking. His work would be finished in 2 days and released on October 5th, 2015. He managed to get it on the servers via help from a player over Skype who verified hacked it. Of course, simply uploading it to the servers would not be the only step he would have to take to get his level recognized, so he next went to the famous YouTuber ROADBLOCks. Tosh had been doing an impossible level series for a while with hacked replays on YouTube, and Kaotik contacted him via Skype to ask if his level could get uploaded. Tosh was interested in what Kaotik had to offer, and he made an auto recording of the level and uploaded it to his channel on October 17th. The video blew up, and it definitely did its part to get Death Corridor as a well-known impossible demon, racing past 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, and even 1 million views in the years that would pass. Today, the video has just under 2 million views, and even though at the time the number was nothing close to that, it got Kaotik's level the attention it needed for it to start to snowball. Despite the recognition as an infamous impossible level, there would be no attempts to beat it in the coming months, as most regarded it as humanly uncompletable. This meant the level really gained no traction beyond ROADBLOCKS' one viral recording of it, but it didn't mean Kaotik didn't try to capitalize on the attention it was getting. Kaotik would soon preview a sequel, Deadly Corridor, on November 28, 2016, to attempt to build on the hype that Death Corridor had been accumulating. He also updated the original DC on March 4, 2016, to make it into a now possible, though extremely hard even for today's standards, version, and made some decoration changes. This will become the official version we know today, and when I refer to the original, I will be talking about this update. 2 months later, he released the sequel, Deadly Corridor, which unfortunately but understandingly would not gain as much attention as the original. It took him 4 months to build this, and an unknown player named Metalface would take interest to the level, starting to progress on it and rebalance the gameplay. However, Deadly Corridor was miles easier than its big brother, Death Corridor, and so far no one even attempted this feared beast of a level. But despite the menacing difficulty, this is all about to change. Enter Kugelblitz, a 60Hz player determined to prove his worth with problematic as his hardest demon, who would be the player to break this trend of DC just being a level for looks. On October 4th, Kugel uploaded 68 to 100 on the updated Death Corridor, which was the best done at the time. He had a passion for the level, and he continued to play it from here, getting 23% from 0, a world record at the time. He contacted Kaotik and told him of his progress, and, impressed, Kaotik gave Kugel permission to verify the level. With this newfound right, he started to buff the level where he felt it necessary, and from October to early November, he would get runs of 43 to 63, 65 to 78, 18%, and 46 to 59. Kugel was showing his huge promise as a player, and though he didn't have much attention from the wider community, those who witnessed his progress likely saw his incredible determination. On October 15th, Metalface would briefly steal the spotlight from Kugel, managing to verify a deadly corridor. This video would gain him its first taste of recognition for the skilled player he was in the community, and though his buff and rebalance of Deadly Corridor would not be rated, it was a sound achievement that would secure an aspect of the level's legacy. This victory would fade in time, and the spotlight of our story goes back to Kugel and a new identity, this time a creator. Unbeknownst to Kugel at the time, Blairswipe, previously known as Airswipe, had been working on a remake of Death Corridor since July of 2016, which had been dubbed Death Corridor Finale. The level had been finished in September, and when he heard about this, he contacted Blairswipe, and though they were reluctant to tell Kugel about any of the information regarding the project, they eventually disclosed that it was a collab with Nobbleboy. Nob would be verifying it after Bloodlust, and despite Kugel attempting to get a copy of the level, Blairswipe kept it private. Kugel would continue to progress on his buffed and balanced version of DC, and the only other player we saw progress on it at this time was N-Level, who would make some runs in late November. We all know now that they were hacked, but it's still an interesting factor to mention. Nothing would really come of this, though, and Kugel would continue to grind the level waiting for Nobbleboy to verify Bloodlust, to see if it was true that he would release the remake. He wouldn't have to wait long, as in December of 2016, Nob would drop the verification it would be given to Skyjax. Kugel had hit a wall with his version of Death Corridor since earlier that month, and he took a small break to beat Eldorado, his current hardest demon. Thus would begin an idle period that would last a few months, all the way up until March of 2017. Skyjax had not shown any progress in verifying Death Corridor Finale so far, and Kugel was still taking a break from his version. But midway through March, this would all change. On March 22nd, Kugel would come back to the level and make his copy into a super buffed version that he would upload a no-clip run of onto his channel, which would happen to catch the eye of Kaotik. Kaotik messaged Kugel, and this would kickstart a chain of events that would end up in the first race to beat Death Corridor. Kaotik said he would give Kugel a super buffed copy of Death Corridor Finale, the remake by Blairswipe that he had been wanting ever since he heard of its existence, but on one condition. This was that he would have to race to beat it with Skyjax, the original verifier, and a player known as the Prime Evil. He wasn't allowed to nerf it either. One very key thing to note here is that Kaotik forgot to delete his copy of DCR that he uploaded to the servers for Kugel, as this minor mistake becomes a very significant and important detail later on, so remember that. This wasn't a concern at the moment, though, as the three players were focused on beating the level. The odds were stacked against Kugel here, with him having to compete with two very skilled 144Hz players on 60Hz, but his passion for the level would finally have a chance to shine through. He made progress despite the insane difficulty of the level, and Skyjax and the Prime Evil fell behind. He did 77 to 91 and 88 to 100 alongside 26 to 40 on March 25th and March 26th, and Skyjax dropped the level on the 25th. This left just the Prime Evil and Kugel, and about 10 days later, the Prime Evil claimed to have verified this beast of a level. This ended up being a highly nerfed version that he later confessed to hacking out of frustration due to lack of progress. This left Kugel as the supposed winner of the race despite not actually beating the level, but he had at least managed to prove himself as the most invested in verifying Death Corridor. This would earn him the right to continue, and he did 15 to 40 on the near impossible version of the level on April 14th. Not much would happen following this relating to DCF, with Kugel becoming very busy with school and exams, but on April 29th, Metalface would get 68 on the original version of the level with a few nerfs. This never amounted to anything. 2 months passed with slim to no progress or news from any party on the level from here. This would change in early July, when Skyjax came back and picked up the level again, this time with a catch. He would only be verifying the original version Nobbleboy was meant to play, and Kugel would be free to progress on his near impossible super buffed version. Despite Skyjax being a very, very skilled player, he didn't have as much determination as Kugel when it came to Death Corridor, who was extremely attached and dedicated to the level. This small race didn't go very far anyway, though, as 5 days later, Skyjax would drop the level again. Kugel asked for Kaotik not to get any more verifiers, as it stressed him out, and he agreed, which is an important detail to remember for later. Fast forward 2 days, and a player by the name of Remakes claims to have verified Death Corridor. This verification was pretty obviously hacked, and with the help of Kaotik and a few of his friends, Kugelblitz exposed him. This demonstrates in essence how many people had attempted to hack Death Corridor, and how the level was still a very prominent part of the community spotlight, and that there would be great rewards for anyone who managed to clear it. Kugel continued to grind away at the level, doing all he could to prove that he was the true verifier of Death Corridor, and that he would be the one destined to verify the legendary level. But this is only the beginning of the story. From here, new remakes would be introduced, scandals would occur, and drama would escalate farther than the players who were presently involved in the project could have ever expected. The date is July 16th, 2017. Our focus is now on a subreddit known as r/geometry-, which was created all the way back in February of 2014. With the existence and showcase of Death Corridor Finale by Blairswipe now being public, a creator and player known as Falcato decides that he does not like what they did with the level, and that they want to make their own remake. Falcato made the first part, which is shown here, and he would get his friend iPizza to make another part in the level. Eventually, what the two had made would snowball into a large MC that would become known as Death Corridor Redux. Getting players like Synactive in on the project, they would establish a team that would become known as Team Falcor. This team would continue to work on Death Corridor Redux as their main project, and via miscommunication with Kaotik, they believed that their version of the level would become the official one over Finale. Remember this detail, as it becomes important later. And just keep in mind that in the background of all the events beyond this day, Death Corridor Redux is slowly becoming realized. On July 20th, 2017, the Prime Evil would return to Death Corridor despite hacking an easier version of the level a few months prior. The difference was that this time, he wouldn't be an official verifier, and he would only be playing the original version to try and beat it for himself legitimately. Unfortunately, nothing significant ever came of this. 2 days later, another player would claim to be verifying Death Corridor by the name of Palacors, and with N-Level, Sunix, and Maleface also progressing on the level, this caused mass confusion amongst the community as to who the real verifier was. Kugel was a very unknown player compared to the three previously mentioned, and this led to Kugel being sidelined even though he was the official verifier. This would all result in KaotikJumper publishing a video that would clarify Kugelblitz as the only verifier of Death Corridor. There were a ridiculous amount of people that were claiming to have explicit permission from Kaotik to verify, which is a blatant lie, and the people claiming to verify often nerfed the level anyways. In the background of all this, Kugelblitz started to make his own version of the level. Playing on 60Hz, he took a copy of Blairswipe's redecorated version and slowly began to make the level more balanced. He focused on timings more than ship buffs and other things, and this would become the beta version of Kugel's version of Death Corridor gameplay. Things seemed to cool down for a little bit, but trouble would arise once more a mere 11 days later, on July 31st, which would be the beginning of one of the biggest dramas relating to the level. NoctaFly had apparently been playing an immensely buffed version of the level in the background of all this, and he direct messaged Kaotik about it, showing he got 65%. This would be on the Blairswipe version of the level, which again, had been buffed to absurd lengths. The way Nocta got a copy is from taking it off Kaotik's account, as if you remember from earlier, Kaotik accidentally left a copy of DCF on the servers when trying to give it to Kugel. This made Nocta and other players think they had the right to verify it as they pleased. Kaotik got excited at the prospect, as Kugel had been taking his sweet time buffing the level as much as he could every time he got consistent, and this prevented any quick progress. This resulted in Kaotik growing restless, and NoctaFly seemed like he might overtake Kugel as the verifier. Kugel reminded Kaotik that he had promised not to get any more verifiers to the level, and they struck up a deal. Kugel would stay the official verifier if he could get to 50% by August 17th, which was 2 weeks and 3 days away from when this happened. The situation would start to get a lot worse from here on out. When NoctaFly uploaded his progress of DC to YouTube, Kugel would get attacked for being a slow verifier, and people thought the level should be given to Nocta as he could get it out faster. People felt very entitled over the level, and the community just wanted the person who could get it out the fastest to be the verifier. NoctaFly would not exactly be a fair sport about the situation, either, attacking Kugel on various platforms and also attempting to accuse Kugel of autoing the level. Kugel played GD on LDM mode because of his laptop's hardware disadvantages, and this is what sparked the accusation, but Kugel debunked this by showing that he had an asymmetrical wave, so it would be obvious he was autoing from the gravity changes. From here, Kugel would continue to grind the level as much as he could, trying to meet the August 17th deadline, and on the 14th, he would get 40%. He died due to nerf control, and unfortunately, it would be August 18th when he would get 51%, clearing the threshold a mere 1 day late. This meant NoctaFly was given the level, but over the next week or so, Kugel would argue with Kaotik and manage to convince him to give the level back, as he had only been a single day off the deadline and he was supposed to be the official verifier anyway. The first preview of Death Corridor Redux would also be shown on this day, which had been steadily forming in the background of all these headlining events. More drama would stem from here, this time involving C1997 and Kugelblitz. C had made a video about Death Corridor, and alongside much of the information being highly inaccurate, Kugelblitz said he failed to even have been mentioned in the video, despite him being the official verifier and a huge part of the level's history. Kugel tried to contact C in DMs, but he was misunderstood as attention-seeking, and C threatened to make a video that it would supposedly expose Kugel if he ever got attention from Death Corridor. This only added on to the stress Kugel was experiencing from the level at the time. It was drama after drama for him, and it wouldn't stop here. Alongside all this, another player came into the mix trying to beat Death Corridor, being DeathFlow. He also almost lost verification perms, which resulted from a misunderstanding involving lithofusion, as Lithy saw Kugel had the same profile picture on Discord as a person he didn't like, who was using Kugel's profile picture as a joke, and he decided to contact KaotikJumper and tell him Kugel was a really bad person and should have his verification perms revoked. Though this was resolved relatively quickly, Kugel was starting to get really sick of all the drama involving Death Corridor. Fortunately, things would start to look up a bit from here. C1997 realized that he had misjudged Kugel, and he would even include him on the next G News, finally portraying him as the official verifier of Death Corridor to a large portion of the YouTube community, which would happen on September 9th, 2017. 2 days before that, NoctaFly had announced that he was quitting Geometry Dash, and this took another weight off Kugel's shoulders. It finally seemed like he could breathe again and see out the project he started almost a year ago. But from here, drama would ensue again, this time on a much bigger scale than before. No one could have expected the events that unfolded next, besides maybe the one behind the events themselves. As many of you might expect, NoctaFly's quitting on September 7th would not be the last we would hear of him. On October 3rd, a little less than a month after he quit, he would return to the game. The first thing he would do would be stream Death Corridor despite Kaotik having revoked verification perms, much to Kugel's dismay. When questioned about why he was verifying it again, NoctaFly answered to his fans that Kugelblitz was not skilled enough to verify the level, and that's why Kugelblitz was beating an easier version, when in reality, Kugel's version was harder than his. School had started up for Kugel again, and he was busy focusing on that and not on Death Corridor, so all eyes were on NoctaFly once again. Kaotik would tell him to stop, but he kept going, getting 66% on the level a day later. The possibility of Kugel verifying Death Corridor Redux instead of Finale is thrown up into the air by Kaotik, but Kugel refuses, liking Finale more and not having a good relationship with the Redux team. 2 days later, on October 6th, NoctaFly gets 88%, and Kugel is understandably mad at his level being stolen. The community takes this as him being mad that NoctaFly is better than him, and he is attacked on Twitter. Kugel has since said that this is likely his lowest point while playing Death Corridor, as DC was the only thing he cared about in GD anymore, and having his efforts be ignored so easily made him feel awful. Nobbleboy was the only big community member that defended Kugel in the whole drama, which is understandable, as he experienced a similar situation with Bloodlust. Despite Kugel's protests, NoctaFly managed to verify the level later that same day, and the community went crazy. Kugelblitz and his friends tried to defend what was supposed to be his right to verify the level, but it was met with backlash, and to the community, this was the first time someone had verified Death Corridor. NoctaFly's DC was likely to be the #1 demon if rated, and I am sure you all understand how mindless the community is towards top ones. Most people either didn't understand Kugel's situation or simply didn't care. Unfortunately, there was really no change in the community's mind or going back now, and it seemed like Nocta had taken away what Kugel had been working hard at for so long. But this didn't stop Kugel from wanting to retaliate, and Kugel had a growing suspicion that NoctaFly's Death Corridor completion was not legitimate. A side note to make is that around this time, Metalface was selected as the verifier for Death Corridor Redux, and he started practicing an unfinished version. Kugel would start to work in the shadows from here on, attempting to talk to various community members to coagulate information about Nocta. His first stop would be ROBLOX, who, after discussing it, believed Nocta hacked it as well. He also got Sunix in on the project, who was suspicious of how unbalanced the gameplay in NoctaFly's version of Death Corridor was. This trio worked together to find evidence and piece together a video that would be uploaded on ROBLOX's channel attempting to expose NoctaFly. This went public on the 9th, and though it didn't fully convince anyone just yet, it was the start of something bigger. Many of you might remember this video and the drama that followed it if you've been in and around the community for most of 2.1, and it got pretty nasty. Tosh and Nocta went on an angry back and forth after this that didn't go anywhere productive, but whilst this was happening, Kugelblitz would begin to grow the group of people attempting to dig dirt on Nocta. Combined was added, and he got rioted on the project, and eventually the group chat exceeded the Discord 10 member limit, so a server was made. This was to be known as Joder Squad, and the member list was extensive, with players like Kugel, Tosh, Sunix, Synactive, Aussie the Dragon, Blue, Riot Combined, Shaggy, Guitar, Metalface, Nobbleboy, Red Husey, Medius, Chaotic, Dorami, Alias, Wushi, and many more being members. As you can tell, this was an in-depth operation. Also, a fun little tidbit. This is the same group that Cosmic Cyclone was created, with Medius and Kugel coming up with the name idea. On October 11th, a level would be created that many of you might be familiar with, and that is Death Corridor Z. Death Corridor Z is essentially identical to Death Corridor Finale in terms of decoration, but it was much more balanced and actually playable. Sonix had permission from Kugel to create this, as he didn't want to play NoctaFly's awfully balanced version, and he knew full well that this would not get rated. The community didn't and really doesn't still understand this, though, and many people are confused as to why this isn't rated. This is because it was never meant to go to Sonix, and Kugel still had verification rights to the rated version of the level. Sonix would verify this on October 20th. Since October 8th, the group Kugelblitz assembled had been gathering information to expose NoctaFly, and they came up with a plan. They would get every big GD content creator to upload the same video, which would be made by Riot, exposing Nocta. This was a very good plan, as it almost guaranteed that anyone even somewhat invested in GD YouTube would eventually see the video, and this is how the drama managed to spread so far. And fortunately, the team would have a great head start from an unexpected source. A very unknown GD player by the name of Megamore1 would make a very big discovery. This was that in NoctaFly's Zaphakil completion video, the background shifted and ended up not only in a different place across the screen, but a different part of the background entirely, indicating a cut. This video would blow up, and NoctaFly would shrug it off as a bug, but it gave the team a very big head start for not only a basis for the video, but to also convince the community. There was still a very large number of people who supported Nocta, including Lukalizer, Davfla, Noise, and Waddy, so the team still had work to do. Big community members started to intervene with the hate that was being sent toward NoctaFly, saying that even if he did hack, he shouldn't be bullied, which is quite ironic, as no one besides Nobbleboy stepped in when Kugelblitz was being bullied for not being able to beat Death Corridor as fast as NoctaFly, even though he had the right to verify it. The team continued to gather information to make their big video, and Death Corridor Redux would also be finished around this time, which meant Metalface would be attempting to verify and release the level. On the page of Remakes, this would be when, on October 30th, Kugelblitz and Chaotic would begin discussing a brand new and final revamp of Death Corridor. With Blair Slope wanting Death Corridor Finale dead, and Death Corridor Z and NoctaFly's version already tainting its legacy, they decided to once again start from scratch and organize a new redecoration. They also got Tosh Deluxe to tell Viper and to tell RobTop that Kugel's version was the official one that should be rated, and he has stayed true to this promise to this day. Kugel and Synactive would host the level, and I won't go into detail about its entire progress as it was created, but keep in mind as the next events unfold that this is being organized and built in the background. In early November, Kugel would start to find the time to grind the level again, proving that amidst all the drama, Death Corridor was still his favorite level and he was determined to beat it. He would get an impressive run of 56 to 100 on his buffed version on November 4th. The NoctaFly situation still lingered in the background as he did this, with him and the team working hard to gather evidence to expose him, and a few days later he would have the new drama to deal with. If you remember from earlier, Chaotic miscommunicated to the Death Corridor Redux team that their version of the level would become the official one for Kugel to verify, which ended up with them resenting Kugel and his new MC version of the level. The Redux team wasn't exactly pleasant to Kugel either, so he wasn't looking to do them any favors in the form of verifying their level. After all, whichever one Kugel decided to play and beat would be the rated official one. The drama did eventually get resolved, but another thing that would start to taint Death Corridor would be the community complaining about the amount of remakes, none of which were technically even meant to exist. Death Corridor Finale was meant to be the official version verified by Kugel, and Redux was never meant to be made as an official remake. Death Corridor Z was just a balanced version of NoctaFly's leaked copy that also wasn't supposed to exist, and Kugel's new remake would have existed if NoctaFly didn't steal the original Death Corridor Finale from him. Anyway, on November 14th, the team would finally gather enough information to put the exposal video together. Big community figures like Riot, Combined, Nobbleboy, Sunix, and Tosh Deluxe would all upload the video, and this made it certain that it would get a lot of attention. NoctaFly responded with a very weak comeback video, and on the 20th, Riot would put together a second exposal. Cooldash later found several cuts on his Extreme Demon completions, which was very solid evidence of NoctaFly being illegitimate, and so Riot began to work on a third and final video. NoctaFly now realized he was backed into a corner, and his confession would essentially be forced out of him a day later. Riot released the third and final video announcing Nocta's confession, and the drama finally came to a close. He confessed to hacking Death Corridor amongst numerous other extremes, and this was the only thing that managed to sway the community to the side of Kugel. If NoctaFly hadn't hacked, it was very likely that they still would have been on his side throughout all of this. An important thing to note is that Nocta never confessed of his own will like something like Andromeda's confession had been, and if he had never got pushed into the corner he had been, it's likely he would have pretended to be legitimate for as long as he could have. This would be a big weight off Kugel's shoulders, and it seemed he finally had his verification project back. The end of the NoctaFly drama would tie together numerous threads of Death Corridor's history in a knot, but there are still many loose ends to the story. From here, the drama would die down, and Kugel would focus his full efforts to verify this beast of a level. The first thing to happen after NoctaFly was exposed was Metalface dropping Death Corridor Redux, which would result in the level going to Meta Man Z. This is really all that would happen for the rest of 2017, with Kugelblitz being busy with GCSE exams, which are very important exams in numerous countries if you're unfamiliar with them. This was in December, and he essentially had no time to play GD from here until the summer. He planned to grind out Death Corridor then. On March 9th of 2018, Metalface would verify the original Death Corridor with a few slight nerfs, but other than that, Death Corridor was essentially unspoken about. Unfortunately, on top of all the drama he had already been through, Kugel had awful luck in the following summer. He had a ton of free time to play the level, but his laptop would stop working entirely, and he wasn't able to play GD at all because of it. On the bright side, he was planning on getting a new PC soon, and this one would be able to run Geometry Dash without LDM. He got his new computer at the start of the summer, but the spacebar was broken, and with him being a spacebar player, it was obviously a big deal. He sent this one back and received a second laptop a month later, but this time the screen was broken, so he had to return it again, and he ended up deciding to just buy the laptop in person. Despite him finally acquiring the hardware he needed a while later, it was a week after school started, and he was going to be a lot busier this year than he was last year due to starting his A-levels. This would be in the beginning of September 2018, and there was finally some new news regarding Death Corridor. Kugelblitz's new remake of the level was completed, and it would simply be called Death Corridor. He couldn't play the level until next summer, though, because he had to focus on his A-levels. He continued to prioritize school, so he didn't play the level much, but on December 16th of 2018, Meta Man Z would finally verify Death Corridor Redux. DCR had been in wait for a long time, and seeing it finally come out was a surreal experience for a lot of people. Fast forward to July of 2019, and Kugel's chance at grinding the level over the summer is once again stolen by tech issues. He was abroad for the next few months, and his laptop's internal fan stopped working, meaning he had to hold off on playing until school started again and he got home to fix it. In September of 2019, Deadly Corridor Redux would finally be finished, which would be the last remake of Death Corridor or Deadly Corridor that was still in the works. This would be verified by Lolwa on October 21st, 2019, and this marked the end of an era for Death Corridor-inspired levels and remakes that were so ever-present a year or two ago. Now all that was left was Kugelblitz's remake, the true version of Death Corridor, and the one that Kugel had still had the right to verify after sticking with it for so long. By toughing through all the drama and misfortune through the years and still being determined to be the one to verify the ultimate form of his favorite level, he proved himself as the worthy verifier. Sadly, he was still busy with school all the way up until March of 2020, when some good luck would finally come his way. The coronavirus pandemic would give him some much-deserved free time to grind away at the level after all the idle years, and he got right to it. After a few weeks of regaining skill from the 2 years he had barely touched the game, he achieved a record of 40% on an even more buffed version. He was only planning on buffing it from here. On April 10th, he would do a run of 38 to 77, which was his best run of the level yet. He also did 38 to 96 off camera, and these parts of the level are the hardest on 60Hz, the refresh rate Kugel played on. He buffed his remake further and further, aiming to get it to top 1, and he got 36% on an even more difficult copy and continued to buff it a lot more from here. In May of 2020, he would start to play some challenge levels, but these would strain his finger, and he was forced to take a week's break from GD. He really wanted to do a run of 57 to 100 on his new version of Death Corridor, and he kept pushing himself despite the finger pain, while getting some very unfortunate fails like 95 and 96 several times. He eventually had to stop from finger pain, and he would try to switch to his middle finger, but on top of the finger injury, he would eventually get diagnosed with carpal tunnel. This was another big roadblock in Kugel's way, and knowing that he had finally had the time to play Death Corridor for the next 2 months, but he wasn't able to because the carpal tunnel was incredibly painful for him. He had planned on verifying it during the free time he had before he started university, but this new problem came in his way, and Kugel just had to accept the fact that the universe would throw everything it possibly could in his way to stop him from verifying Death Corridor. Despite people saying that he should switch to bypass, he wanted to beat it on 60 Hz, and despite everything that had happened so far, he was still invested in the level. He tried playing with his left hand, but it wasn't enough to get any significant progress. On August 14th of 2020, Kugel considered switching to playing with a mouse. As though he was best on his spacebar, it strained his hand way too much for him to continue with it. Mouse with his right hand wasn't optimal, but it was certainly better than playing with his left hand. He slowly built up skill with mouse by playing other levels in GD, and he would come back to Death Corridor on August 22nd, managing to complete the 57-100 run he had been trying to for so long in a day. And even though he should be celebrated for still pushing through with the level, Kugel was getting continuously bullied now by a group of people in the community for still trying to verify the level after all this time. He managed to ignore them for a long while, but Dr. Joe ended up getting a leaked copy of his remake on August 27th and uploaded it publicly to mess with him, and things went downhill from there. This all happened because Kugel had given a copy of the level to Swyborg, who uploaded it to his account unlisted as a backup, and Dr. Joe used the unlisted copy hack to get the level since he was friends with Swyborg in GD. Now there was a leaked copy that a sizable portion of the top player base had even after it was taken down, and after doing some runs on the easiest part of the level, many called it easy to Kugel's face despite everything he had been through with it, especially considering he played on 60 Hz. Kugel got sick of the community after this, and he left all the GD servers he was in, deleted his Twitter, and unfriended most of the GD community on Discord, besides some close friends. Dr. Joe eventually apologized for causing this, and the two have made up since. But at the time it really got to Kugel's motivation to play, as Death Corridor was and still is the only thing he really cares about in Geometry Dash. To see his years of efforts be demeaned just like that understandably hit pretty hard. On August 29th, Dr. Joe would verify N-Level's version of Death Corridor Finale with some buffs, and that would be the final changed gameplay version of any copy of Death Corridor that needed to be verified, besides the very original, as it was physically impossible. And that essentially brings us to where we are today. Kugelblitz has been grinding Geometry Dash to get his skill up since September, and he's going to keep playing Geometry Dash until he one day finally verifies Death Corridor. He's not a part of the community anymore, but he's integral to the level, and he's definitely the main character of its history. No one else has stuck with it or been as passionate about the level as he has, and he undoubtedly deserves to one day have his copy of Death Corridor be placed on the list. Skyjax is the backup verifier for Death Corridor if Kugel ever gave up, which I don't think he will, since Skyjax has been a huge part of the level's history and he was a great friend and supporter of Kugel. Kugelblitz has poured roughly 300,000 attempts into the level at this point, and I believe he will verify it one day. Through all the pain, drama, struggle, roadblocks, and misfortune, Kugel has held strong to his vow of verifying Death Corridor. If his story can't prove that he deserved this more than anyone else, I don't know what will. And I think if he doesn't, then no one does. Death Corridor has been a level that has changed entire careers and has sparked so much drama as well as passion, and it is without a doubt one of the most influential impossible levels in this game's history. It shaped so many players and, coming from an impossible level made in 2 days by a completely unknown creator, the amount of remakes and careers it's built single-handedly is quite mind-blowing. When Kugelblitz does verify the final version of this extreme demon, it will tie the final knot in this web of community-wide interactions that have spanned the course of 5 years, and it will bring closure to this legendary impossible level. We will just have to wait until then, and for now, all we can do is remember the incredible history this level has, and pay mind to all the key figures and scenarios that made this complex story such a remarkable one. Death Corridor is a legendary extreme demon, to say the least, and it has been my pleasure to take a trip through time to tell its extraordinary tale. Well, that was quite a lot, but there we go. The full history of Death Corridor summarized in a video, from its origins to where it is today. So much has caused this level to become cemented as one of the most legendary levels in the history of Geometry Dash, and putting all the information in a neat package is something I was honored to do. Before I close out, I need to thank some people. This video would not have at all been possible without the cooperation of numerous individuals, and I want to thank them all here. First, I want to appreciate Kaotik for talking me through the level's initial history, and what he had to say was very fresh intuition for the intro sections of the video. Beyond that, I want to thank Metalface, Falcato, Smokewee, and Synactive from Team Falcor for helping me gather information, most notably Synactive. I also want to thank Skyjax for helping me gather some footage in particular. And the final person I want to thank today is Kugelblitz. This video would not have been anywhere near as accurate without his willingness to help out, and from being the one to spell out the entire timeline of the level for me to getting the inside information on how the level's history went down, I want to appreciate him specifically for his contributions. Anyway, this has been one of my favorite videos to make ever, as I think Death Corridor has such a unique history that more people need to hear. I really appreciate it if you guys watch this far, as watching through this whole video and getting the whole picture is something I think more individuals need to do. I think we need to give more respect to people like Kugelblitz, who have gone so unnoticed and unappreciated for all that they did, went through, and are still going through. And even if it was just the act of mentally understanding everything he dealt with, I know he would appreciate it a ton. And no, Kugel did not tell me in any way, shape, or form to say this stuff about him. It's coming right from my heart. I hope that after hearing his story, you are all on the same page also. Overall, this video was an absolute blast to see come to life, and I really hope you guys can see the passion I put into it. If you happen to watch this far, I really thank you for listening to all I have to say, and I won't drag it out any longer. Like I've said many times already, Death Corridor is a legendary level by all senses of the word, and I hope you all enjoyed learning about why it's one of the most unique levels story-wise in this game's history. Thank you all so much, and I will catch you all in the next one.